Welcome back to the House Environment Committee. We are this morning joined by the Fish and Wildlife Department to start off with the Warden Service budget structure. We're doing this in the morning because everyone will be awake.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. My name is Jason Batchelder. I'm the Fish and Wildlife Commissioner, and I'm joined by Colonel Stedman, the Director of the Warden Service, our Business Manager, Elizabeth Stratton, and also Steve Gomez with Secretary's Office. I have a bit of an intro, and then I'll turn it over to the slideshow and the Colonel, but I'll stay. I have a little bit of a history, hopefully it could be helpful with the department. But I think I'll start with just a little bit of a short history. It looks long on my page, but I'll go through it pretty quickly. The earliest fish and game law in Vermont passed in 1779 protected deer from January 10th to June 10th. When these first laws arrived, the enforcers were called deer reeves, and I'm sure you've heard of shire reeves. These were deer reeves. Enforcing these laws, a reeve being defined as a local official charged with the enforcement of specific regulations. These officials were chosen on a town basis to enforce this very narrow scope of laws, but were not selected in all areas, and they had little power, and it led to very inconsistent regulation. Fish and game populations, as you may know, were at an all-time low, with deer nearly extirpated and the native fish populations depleted. Early settlers had relied on these resources for food and had a great disdain for fish and game laws and the people who enforced them. As a result, laws were not enforced in many instances, and as a result, by the early 1800s, with deer nearly gone, the office of deer reeve shortly followed and disappeared as well. Things would not change for about a century. A gentleman named George Perkins Marsh was the first man to hold the title of Fish Commissioner in Vermont. Fish Commissioner was the next iteration of State Game Warden. In his report to the governor, who was Ryland Fletcher, on October 10th, 1857, he had this to say: the habits of our people, meaning Vermonters, are so averse to the restraints of game laws, which have been found I'm having trouble with that one, peculiarly obnoxious in all counties that have adopted them, that any general legislation of this character would probably be found an inadequate safeguard. In many European countries, where restrictive and prohibitory laws of all sorts are much more rigidly enforced than with us, the preservation of the land and aquatic game has been an object of legislation for centuries, but none of these systems has ever been attended with general success. And the possessors of great forests and fisheries, whether royal or private, everywhere depend rather upon guards and enclosures than upon the terror of law for the protection of the objects of the chase and of the fishery. Fish wardens were fish focused at this time, deer being almost gone. And among other duties, they were to require of all persons, I'm going to quote here from the regulation, fishing nets to show under which license they were fishing, and examining nets and other devices, et cetera, like we do now. Unlike now, fish wardens could fine and sell what they confiscated, 2/3 of the sale going to said warden, as well as 1/2 of all the fines imposed of the sale. Now, even with these sound budgetary principles in place, fish warden didn't last long either. And on December 7th, 1904, almost done, the legislature passed Public Act number 118. It was an act to establish a fish and game commissioner and fish and game wardens to appropriate a sum of money for the protection of fish and game. This established the state game warden as we now know it. 1904 is on the badge and was the beginning of our current warden service. This act authorized the commissioner to appoint, with the consent of the Senate, not less than 1 or more than 2 wardens per county. Wardens would receive $2 per day and expenses paid by the state while officially employed. Now, as you know, and you'll further see in our PowerPoint, that even adjusted for inflation, today's state game warden is worth more than that. And I hope that some of this will explain the nuances of their day-to-day and how they're funded. I believe, and I didn't have the conversation directly, that the secretary wanted us to expose this budget as one that is very tight, that is very responsible, that is very non-malleable, I guess would be the word. We are appropriated our funds each year The colonel buys enough trucks and flashlights and batteries, and then the rest of the money goes to paying people. The wardens are extraordinary individuals from their upbringing to their education, and I think we'll maybe even get into a little bit of that too. But I would love to get into the PowerPoint a little bit, and start from there. Realizing I did not bring that up on my end.
That's right. So it's okay.
Let's pull it up here.
Sure. While the commissioner's doing that, just for the record, Justin Stedman, Director of the Warden Service. So as you can see in the overview, there's some highlights there, but basically state game wardens, like all state law or all law enforcement in the state, are entrusted to enforce all the laws of the state. We all collectively bear responsibility, although we have our areas of expertise. Obviously, we concentrate primarily on hunting, fishing, and trapping, boating, snowmobile, and ATV. Those are the principal areas. That said, though, we respond to, outside of just law enforcement, human wildlife conflict, injured wildlife. We also respond to all sorts of calls related to general violations of law in support of other law enforcement. One of our wardens was significantly injured last year in the incident in the islands where the individual had killed his parents. He was actually struck by the fleeing individual as he attempted to apprehend him. So the wardens are routinely involved in things that have nothing to do with fish and wildlife. I think we can go to the next slide if you don't mind. So this is the overview of the budget, and basically out of an approximate little over $9 million budget, 86% of that goes to salary and benefits, and 14% goes to all of the other stuff I need or we need. And when you figure, especially after COVID, the cost increases of things, trucks went from $28,000 to $55,000 overnight and haven't really come down. That $1.1 million does not go very far. And we routinely have to move money from one place to another to try and address various issues that arise. You can see some of the breakdown there, the larger expenditures in operating communications, that's what we pay for our radios and the functionality we get out of those. Gas is obviously something that fluctuates. Equipment and replacement, vehicle repairs and vehicles, those are the big things. And then the remaining, and that's just a sort of literally 337,000 is everything else. That's the money it costs to hire and move people around the state during their training phase, equipment, uniforms, all that sort of stuff. So but most of it's salary benefits. So I want to go to the next slide. This is sort of the, again, high view of revenue. Basically 52% of our budget comes from license funds. 45% comes from general funds. And then there's a small bit there that comes from a few other places. The motor fuel tax, I just think it's kind of comical. So I'll point it out that we get 76% of 3/8 of 1 cent. I would love to have been in the room when whoever figured that calculation out and why they went to that extent. It's just, I mean, I don't even know what that is for a number, like what does that even mean? So anyways, so that's the calculation out of the gas motor fuel tax we get. Obviously that with changing patterns in Vermonters' use of electric vehicles and just a general, I think, maybe reliance on public transportation and stuff that came out of COVID, that number has ticked downwards since about 2020. And I don't want to go too fast and we can certainly go back to anything, but that's basically it in a nutshell. Then I think we have maybe 1 or 2 more slides or that. And this is just, so we do a report out to the legislature every year, and this is one of the sort of the reporting metrics for the warden service. And you can see there, the top number, those are the calls per year from 21 to 25. And then the lower number, so we have, real quick, one of our wardens is very passionate about trying to get food to I shouldn't say one, actually, I'll mention another one, but many of the wardens are passionate about getting food to Vermonters who are in need. And so she started what she calls Venison for Vermonters program. And it is a collaborative where wardens, some just by the wardens, some in collaboration with meat cutters and meat processors around the state, process either illegally harvested animals or roadkill animals. And that's the pounds of processed meat that has been donated. So you can see in 21, they were able to donate 3,500 pounds of processed meat to food shelves, and we do it around the state. The one issue we have is that demand has rapidly outpaced our capacity to provide it because there are so many Vermonters in need. But the wardens do. There's several of them that spend a tremendous amount of time on it, and then the other ones will take the animals to places. What the usable animals will take them to places that will donate them or get them to the wardens that'll do it themselves. So those are the metrics that we report out. And then the last thing I want to say, and then I wanted to basically give as much time to questions that y'all may have. But so that slide you saw about the funding and where salaries. So that the salaries piece there, that's 42 positions. 40 of those are sworn, 2 are civilian. We have 6 command staff. We're actually adding one, 2, and when I say adding, it means we're taking from the field, but we're moving 1 position to the command staff because capacity is just, we just can't do what we're doing. And in searching some of the documents, I found a write-up from 2012 that suggested the need for additional capacity in headquarters. So we're finally making a move. So we'll have 7 command staff. That would be 3 in Montpelier here, and then 1 district supervisor for the 4 supervisory districts. We have 2 detectives and then 31 field positions. Currently, we have 4 vacancies, so that means 27 wardens are covering the entire state. Out of those 27 wardens, 2 are trainees, so they're not doing anything. So you got 25 wardens who are covering the entire state of Vermont. Out of those 25 wardens, we have 3 coaches, 3 military members, 2 officers, 1 enlisted, one of whom is deploying in over a month and a half per year. So we'll be down another one. 3 EMTs, 3 community committee members, 1 foster parent, and 1 PhD. So I just wanted to read this bit about, I thought this was interesting. This came in a roundabout way. The warden was embarrassed when I got it, but the warden had arrested a poacher on 3 different occasions. And on the last occasion, he found him in homeless, living in a car in a local forest. And so the warden took it upon himself to bring in bags of groceries and clothing in the hopes that the individual would stop poaching deer because he would have enough food and wouldn't need to. On another occasion, took bags of groceries to a homeless woman with mental health issues in one of his local towns. And he wrote, "This is nothing special. I'm sure most of the wardens do this kind of stuff." They really do care about Vermonters. And I think that's the part that, when you look at our budget and it's like, how does that much money go to salaries? Wardens are not cheap, but they're really good people. And they really do care. And that's the point I want to drive home. So with that, happy to ask any question or answer any question. Not asking, answer any question you may have. And if there's specific stuff about the budget, that's what Elizabeth and Steve are here for, because I freely admit that I turn to them when about certain things because I just don't know. So.
Okay. Wow, I think I saw Representative Morris and Labor and Tagliavia and Austin, so we'll go Morris.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation. I noticed you only have 1 FTE that's a vacancy savings. So are you actively recruiting for those other 3 spots?
I appreciate that question. We do. So the process by which we hire is very long. So we will start the process in another month to hire for 2027. Because so there's a couple of things here. One, it is an extremely long process because we want good people. We're hiring, he's actually a warden in Florida right now. We sent our detective to Florida for a week to go talk to anybody and everybody because we don't want bad people. But the process is long because we weed a lot of people out. And it takes time. And so at any rate, where I'm going with that is we send people to the academy in February. So we have 1 in the academy now, but we were just not in a position to hire more because we we don't have capacity to anticipate retirements. Like I know one of the wardens is retiring in December, but we can't pre-fill positions if we're anywhere near full. We've been full twice in my career, but for about 8 months combined. And it's just it's an issue of there's not room to anticipate vacancies, but we're not saving. It's just a process of which we have to go through. And from the day you start the process to the time you're actually wearing a uniform takes 9 months, and then it's another year before you were even into a district. So we're talking about 2 years to get someone into a district is what it takes us. And so it just, in that time, people retire, things happen, and that's where we lose numbers. So.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
And labor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Given the difficulty in recruiting and only 27 wardens remaining to cover the state, has there been any leaning towards training wardens of interest? Because they're not certainly all going to want to do this, but looking at drones with cameras and infrared sensors to help them in their investigations of poaching, et cetera.
We actually just submitted a request to the federal government. There's Welch has I'm not going to get, anyways, there's a funding mechanism and we've asked for a couple of drones. I will just say on that point. So when the commissioner and I applied to be wardens, there were 1,300 applicants for one position. Thankfully, they took more than that because neither he nor I were number one.
I think I was number one.
Yeah. We don't get those numbers now, but we still have. So when we advertised last year for one position, we had almost 200 applicants, which compared to other law enforcement is astronomical. I mean, state police have days nobody even shows up. And that's not just them. I mean, it's across all law enforcement. It's very challenging. The uniqueness of our job still brings people who are maybe less law enforcement minded and more just passionate about the outdoors and will tolerate the law enforcement part of it. And so we have a lot of people who, I mean, we have one warden who is doing a thesis on tick transmitted diseases and came here from no law enforcement sort of perspective. But so at any rate, we are working on the drone piece. To answer your specific question, I just wanted to highlight, we still do have, knock on wood, relatively good or high interest in positions for the warden service. So we count ourselves lucky in that respect.
Thank you.
Tyler,
2 questions. On the hiring, what's the biggest barrier you see to being able to hire?
Honestly, us. I mean, we out of the nearly 200, we brought 30 to interviews, and out of that 30, we were willing to entertain 10. And it's just, we're very selective. And part of that is we still have the ability to be selective. And I'm not trying to say that we're better than other law enforcement in the sense that in our selection process, but we have the capacity to say, that's like lukewarm, and I'm not doing lukewarm. If we wanted to, we could certainly hire a lot more people just to have people, but we don't want to do that.
Maybe talking financially as well.
Oh, do you mean as far as?
Whatever the top barrier is.
Yeah, I mean, and are you talking, and maybe I'm missing what you're.
I don't want to interject. I thought the representative may have meant, if we wanted 100, there's not funding for that, right? If we wanted 50, there probably isn't funding for that unless we all did foot patrol because we don't have enough trucks. We couldn't afford trucks. I think in that instance, the barrier is balancing the work against the revenue, against the ability for us to manage that many people in what is essentially essentially it's a police force, right? So the colonel is the director of the warden service, but he's a chief of police as well, and second biggest state police force in Vermont. So I think looking at could we or should we? I think the budget is the big key, and And the demographics also, right? I mean, there are certain times of the year, what I think the colonel would say that he had a warden in every town, they would still be too busy. But on March 18th, it's a good time to do paperwork in some districts, right? That we don't have snowmobiling, we don't have fishing, no hunting is really going on. And so it would be difficult to justify 75 wardens today. November 15th, we could use 100. But yeah,
And to that point, I have said, and I mean, if you told me today you were giving me 10 more wardens, we're at 52, I can tell you right now exactly what every one of them is going to do. They will not be twiddling their thumbs. There is more than enough work from that perspective. So if I missed where you're going with that, I apologize. But
What's the average age of the applicants that you get?
it varies dramatically. Yeah, we have currently the three there's a nickname that the wardens have already given them, and I think they're calling them the Gray Hair Club. Because the three most recent wardens we hired are all in their mid to late 30s. And
The gray hair.
they're the Gray Hair Club. We have several wardens that were born after 2000, so it's a little scary. But yeah, it varies. It really does vary. So the three current wardens that are being hired will be significantly older than some of the wardens that were hired 5, 6, 7 years ahead of them, 10 years ahead of them. So yeah.
It looks like the number of pounds of deer or moose or bear meat that was donated has dropped significantly. What do you attribute that to?
Part of its capacity. That's one of the things. So again, everything takes time and resources, and so one of the main people who does a significant amount of work on that program is in a district right now that is down 3 wardens and has been down a number of wardens for a while, just because we haven't had capacity to replace them. And so she doesn't have as much time to do it as she did. And that's why she's trying to she just added 2 new meat processors that are independent to do some of the work to help distribute it.
So this is processed. This is not, oh, guess what? We've got this.
Oh, no, this is cut. It's all hamburger, or well, all burger, sorry.
Mhm.
Not hamburger, venison or moose burger, but it's all processed, packaged and delivered in, I think it's 2-pound packages. So it's literally ready to plop in a frying pan and cook. So.
Thank you.
Representative Austin.
Yep, a few questions. Just, I noticed the invasive species grant was $15,000, and I know the Lake Champlain Advisory Council that's one of their highest of their 4 recommendations. And just another source that I talked to, I'm just wondering, are there other funding sources that are dealing with invasive species?
No, so that money was specifically assigned or given to us from DEC to pay for overtime work at access areas and talking to people but wardens, we're actually, quite frankly, this year, I don't think we're taking the money just because wardens are doing it anyways. It's part of what they do. One of the issues though, and this is what we get requests often for wardens to do various activities, patrolling the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail for ATVs, or patrolling the Green Mountain National Forest we get all these asks. And so we're usually very happy to try and accommodate, but the warden has to prioritize what they're doing. So one of the ways we concentrated their efforts to the specific ask was to say, look, if you want us to do this, we need money to pay overtime so that when they're doing that, that's the only thing they're doing. And what we found was, while that was certainly beneficial and directed, during the summer, most of the warden work is around the water and they're doing it anyways. So basically we said to DEC, like, we'll keep doing work, and if you find it's a significant difference, we can go back. But so at any rate, that was that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mhm.
And do you have a budget for biologists?
The department does, but that does not come out of the law enforcement budget.
Okay. And what is the path to becoming a game warden? I'm wondering if our tech centers or universities, state universities, do they have a track that kids can pick up from high school?
They do, actually. One of our wardens is on whatever, I apologize for whatever the committee is that oversees the college program, but it's a conservation law enforcement program. So there's college programs specifically designed to conservation law enforcement. Vermont is unique in that so many, or I should say, probably most state fish and wildlife law enforcement agencies require an environmental degree. Vermont will accept environmental degree, law enforcement degree, military, or we actually changed to say basically 4 years of consistent employment, at one place, like, and the reason we did that is because oftentimes, and I guarantee you the commissioner will start nodding, is we'll run into people that, I want to be a game warden. What happened? Oh, well, ended up having kids and life got in the way, and I've been working at, driving truck for Casella for the last 12 years. It's like, what says they wouldn't possibly be a good game warden? So we changed our process. I will say we got a lot of interest, but one of the things that's required is we have a very, very extensive personal history questionnaire that delves deeply into criminality and drug use and all that sort of stuff. And I think a lot of people who end up taking a different path in life don't always consider the ramifications or even the possibility that it'll come around again. And that has been a challenge with some of those individuals. It's just they made choices that we can't accept at this point. So
I think in fairness, though, I think you've gone a long way from the days of what was prohibited. at that
agreed.
time.
Yes, absolutely. No doubt. Yep.
And the last question is, about 5 years ago, I heard that processing game butchers or whatever you call them was really that we had a very small amount.
We do.
Still,
Yes.
can it help meet capacity or?
Yeah, oh, certainly. I mean, the more butchers we have, the better. I think that is a, without delving too far off of the topic, as a general statement, it's a labor-intensive job that is not glamorous. I mean, it's cold because you're working in a place that's cold. It's messy. It's a lot of things that people don't want to put up with. And there are fewer younger people coming into it than there are older people going out of it. So as with a lot of things,
Yeah.
not just that. So, but there are not a lot of butchers. That is certainly a consideration.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Representative Pritchard.
Yeah, so I guess the one thing that I wanted to say is how appreciative I am of what your department does. I don't think people realize all the things that you are tasked to do. And I feel that a lot of times there's an under appreciation for that. And it's a department that, quite frankly, I felt for years that has been underfunded. It's a department that gets the crumbs after everybody else gets served. So, I just want to say that, I really appreciate your mission statement and what you folks do. And I know I've been involved, through the hunter safety program and other programs, but I see what happens and I see the care that the people have for what they do. And thank you.
Thank you.
So I only have one question, and it's more to clarify because I may have been wrong. We had a discussion in committee a while ago, and it came up about the powers of the legal powers the game has. And it's my understanding that they're the most vast in the state. Is that, there's things that you can enforce that the state police can't enforce? Is that?
So
Can you just explain that?
So the short answer is no. Everybody has the same amount of authority. The issue is most people don't have the knowledge. When I say most people, I mean most law enforcement. They just don't do what we do, so they don't understand how to do it. So they simply call us and say, help. Because it's not something that they deal with. Technically, a state trooper could write you a ticket for jacking a deer, and a game warden can arrest you for DUI. We all have statewide authority to enforce everything. A municipal officer, a sheriff, everybody has statewide authority to enforce all the laws of the state. It's not unique to any one entity. We then all focus on our areas, and Fish and Wildlife, well, I don't need to tell this committee, look at when we tried to explain like the points and the penalties, and like it's confusing and complicated. And there are so many nuances to Fish and Wildlife law that many we do have some law enforcement, local law enforcement or troopers who are avid hunters or fishers or trappers who are really into it. And so they get it and they'll do stuff independent of the wardens because they can, but most just don't understand it. So they're like, help, what do I do? Here you go. Found it, all yours, that sort of stuff. But yeah, but everybody has the same authority in the state.
I stand corrected.
Representative Sakowitz, and then I have a couple, and then Representative Weber.
Yeah, for your wardens that are in the field, how much of their activity is driven, sort of complaint driven? And how much of it is sort of regular patrols and other duties that are independent of somebody calling in and saying something's going on?
That's a great question. I'm so glad you asked it. That's part of the reason why we're so selective, because as you well, I mean, most of our victims don't call because they can't, right? I mean, and quite frankly, I mean, I know this committee hears from very passionate people, but people just, they don't care enough to call. They see something, they're like, eh, and they don't do anything. So if the wardens aren't out looking, they don't find it. And so we want people who are self-motivated, who want to get up and go do what needs to be done, because if they sit and wait for the calls, there's not a whole lot going to happen. I will say from the days that he and I were in the field to now, though, things have changed dramatically in the sense that a lot of the calls are not fish and wildlife related. It's animal cruelty. I mean, the wardens are, because of staffing, I mean, wardens are going to domestics, they're going to neighbor disputes, they're going to accidents, they're going to fights in progress, they're going to all this other sort of stuff because there's no other resources to send. Our mutual assist calls, they more than quadrupled in the span of like 2 years. I mean, it went from like 120 to 500 or 600 calls because, and it's a byproduct of the staffing issues across the state and other entities. They need a warm body they can count on to secure a scene or stop people from doing whatever it is that they're doing. So, so a majority of the calls that were on there, of those 9,000 calls, I would still say a majority are generated by the wardens themselves. Because again, it just, no poacher is going to call in and say, hey, I just did this. And you know what I mean? And people will, we get this all the time. Oh, I heard a shot last night at 2:00, but I didn't want to bother you. It's like, that's what I get paid for. Like, bother me. But people want to be kind and polite, and not many. And so, yeah, if we're not out there, we don't know about it. So hopefully that answers your question.
That might also get to my question, but I'll say, what other work is going undone? You said, you could double the force and they wouldn't be idle.
Mhm.
Maybe just a little more on what work's not getting done.
Sure. Well, and that's a great question, Madam Chair. I think some of the stuff that is not getting done is the protection of species that get far less attention. One of those that we were here last year on, about reptiles and the amphibians. There is a tremendous amount of work in the area of illegal animal trade that I would love to dedicate more resources to, that I don't have the resources to dedicate. I know wardens have seized some very freaky poisonous things that have come through, but we had somebody show up with kangaroos and alligators and something else at a fair last year, and just like there's so much of that illegal movement of animals, both native species leaving the state and species we don't want coming into the state, that we just don't have the capacity to deal with, because it is incredibly labor and time intensive to get into this stuff. A lot of this, and you can research this worldwide. I think next to the drug trade, the illegal animal trade is sort of like the next big moneymaker. It's in the billions of dollars in terms of movement of animals and parts of animals and things of that nature. And so a lot of this is tied to organized crime and things of that nature. And like, there's 42 of us. We can only do so much. So that's one of the big areas. But then just in terms of that, I mean, you had asked a question, ma'am, about, response times. We got wardens covering 14 towns because we don't have enough wardens to reduce it. I'd love to get to 6 to 8 towns per warden, but we don't have capacity for that. I'd love to, the span of control of supervisors. They say that typically to be effective, you want between 4 to 6 direct reports. We don't have a lieutenant that has less than 8 because we don't have, it's a capacity issue. So and then last, quite frankly, the animal cruelty stuff, I'd love to detail some people to take that off the warden's plate so they can get back out to patrolling, because one of our wardens, I would wager the horse case down in, wherever that was, Tongbridge, no, it wasn't Tongbridge, wherever it was down south, the Frisians of Majesty. I mean, he has hundreds of hours in that case, just sitting typing. I mean, he's got one affidavit that's 42 pages long. And it's like, it's insane. It takes so much time. So
do you have someone detailed to the illegal animal trade?
we have one person. I apologize. We just added a second person, but that's not the only thing that they do. It's one of their responsibilities, but they're also, he was the gentleman who was in Florida. He's also responsible for traveling for all of our backgrounds. We now have 2 of them that we can tap into, but they do all the backgrounds for our hunter ed instructors, our camp counselors. They do all kinds of work beyond just that. They do a lot of warrants around preservation warrants around data, preserving data on cell phones and all that sort of stuff, which are fairly complicated and time consuming and very unique in how they have to be written. So they do a lot of that for the field wardens. So they have many roles, but that's one of the roles that they work on. Yeah.
And then particularly since you said there's sort of like, I think there's new and younger wardens out there. How do you advise them to prioritize their work?
So it's not as direct as that. So they spend 4 months at the police academy, and then they spend 8 months traveling around the state in field training, observing from other wardens. There are very few districts, even side-by-side districts, that have the same demands or the same geography, topography, whatever word you want to use. Some have a lot more water, some have a lot less water, some have taller mountains, some have no mountains. And so a lot of it, we entrust that they're going to figure out the needs of their district and how to best work it. And that's partly, again, ties back to the selective nature with which our hiring process operates, because there is certainly capacity for someone who doesn't want to do anything to not do anything, and we can't afford to have that. So we certainly sort of use the hierarchy of basically time in grade and letting wardens that are more senior or spend time sort of counsel the younger wardens on, hey, this is a good place to be this time of year. And that happened, I guarantee you, it happened to the commissioner too. Like your neighboring wardens be like, oh, look, you want to be in this place at this time because this is usually going on here. This is a really big fishing place in the spring. You want to watch this. And then of course, also you get this family you want to watch for, that family, that sort of stuff. And so that's typically how that works, but it's not as direct as we do have sort of, if you will, expectations of certain times of the year. And so obviously fall, you're concentrating on typically on hunting, summers, boating and fishing, that sort of stuff, but it's not direct. That answers your question.
Thanks. Representative Labor.
Thank you, Chair. Given the shortage of actual recruitment, is your department accused of poaching other agencies?
I am very happy to say that in my tenure, we have taken one officer from another department.
So pay grades are pretty near equal.
They are, I think one of the metrics I left out, I'll just say, so one of the unique things about game wardens is that you can find a game warden's phone number on the internet. You cannot Google any other law enforcement officer in this state and find their cell phone number. Wardens, just the field wardens, had over 49,000 incoming phone calls last year. That's a lot of phone calls.
But you did tell us to call more.
Absolutely. We do want that. And that's the irony. We want that. We want people to call more. But I just want to highlight that I guarantee you, there isn't another, the state police don't have that many incoming calls to state issued cell phones. And it's not disparaging them. You can't find any law enforcement officer. So there are pitfalls to our job that do negate the pay, if that, to your point. And there are some that just are like, I'm not doing that. But one of the things, and one of the reasons we don't poach very often, is that we have relatively strict. We have just recently relaxed them due to the situation in Vermont. We had, up until this year, a requirement that you had to live in your patrol district. We have expanded that to say that you can live in your patrol district or neighboring town, or there's a time to the center of the district that we allow that gives a little more flexibility, just because housing is so challenging to find. Starting salary for warden, I think, is maybe $50,000 out of the gate, maybe. And so that doesn't go very far right now. So we had to do something to, and I don't know if you have the starting number. I don't know if I'm way off there. I just thought it's not, I don't think I'm that far off, but please don't hold me exactly to that number. It's not enough to buy a house in the current market. So we had to relax the requirements a little bit, but that prevented us from poaching people because most of the folks that are established don't want to move, and they're not willing to move to go work for us. So
Second part of the question. During high density usage. Fall. Do you, when I was hunting quite actively, I would run into a deputy. Do you still employ deputy wardens?
one. So the part of the issue is that the requirements for deputy wardens have changed at the state level, which has nothing to do with us. So in the old days, well, even wardens themselves, in the old days, literally you'd show up to hand you a badge and a gun and be like, welcome to work. And you went to work, and that was it. Now it's the academy, it's all the other stuff. And there's some of the old warden stories are just absolutely fantastic for how they started work, with literally being handed a badge and a gun and then told to go do the job. And it was like, that was it. But the deputies now, they have to go to the police academy for 3 weeks. They have to attain 120 hours of training. They have to pass the PT test, the polygraph, the psychological background. They have to do all that sort of stuff. And it's not really conducive to a job that pays $10 an hour once a year, because they get paid once a year.
Do any of your wardens that are retiring or have retired volunteer as a deputy warden? Thank you.
Representative Austin.
Yeah, just what would be your two top priorities in terms of, or what are your two top priorities? In terms of if you could get additional funding for something.
If I could get additional funding, so one of the things we have, so we don't have enough money to buy trucks. So we're continually underfunded on trucks, which creates a problem because 2 years ago, we were down to the point where if a truck broke, we were unable to send wardens in some districts, and we had nothing left. We had nothing left with wheels that would run. So we're always struggling there. And quite frankly, I mean, the wardens, they're hard on their equipment because the job demands it. You know, they're on these back roads, and quite frankly, the stuff just isn't built to what the standard it used to be. And so we don't get as much out of it as we used to. So that's one area. And then quite frankly, the other area would be personnel. Like we could really, I mean, realistically, like I said, we could use 10 people, but if we got 3 or 4 people, we could put them to work and make a dent. The other side effect of where we're at now is that a lot of the wardens do feel exceedingly taxed. I mean, they are just, when the commissioner and I were wardens, the joke was you worked awful hard September to December, and then you could take a break. And they don't get a break anymore. They're on the point of things most of the time now. Mud season's about the only real slow time now, because I mean, and that varies on how long that lasts, but there are people out on the landscape, and they're out looking for them all the time. And certainly the increased focus on recreational enforcement has made them busy year round. So.
Morris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Rep. Austin, for asking that last question about the the answer for vehicles. I noticed your vehicle repairs and vehicle replacement, about 476,000 in this budget. Does that include, you mentioned trucks, but does that include snowmobiles, boats, is that all?
No, so all of that, snowmobiles, ATVs, all of it comes out of that overall number there, the 337,000. The snowmobiles, ATVs, some of the smaller boats and stuff all comes out of that. I mean, literally, that is everything. Everything that a warden comes with comes out of that 337,000. The 361 is specifically for trucks. But I need like 550.
Right, yeah. The reason I asked the question is I'm on the select board in my town and capital equipment, and you mentioned the cost of replacement vehicles now compared to what they used to be just 5 years ago is just astronomical. And I'm just looking at that and I'm perplexed that I can see with that, that's not enough.
Yeah, oh no,
And that's, what is your retention on vehicles? Is it
about 5 years.
5 years? And is that because they exceed mileage? Because they're covering a lot of districts?
Yeah, so the wardens on average, about 25,000 to 30,000 miles a year is on about average for a warden. And what it is it just after the 5 year mark, the cost to keep them on the road far exceeds their value, basically. And so, yeah, that's where we keep the 5 year mark. So on average, we need about 8 trucks a year to get, to get to that replacement at 5 years. And we have the money for about 6. So, yeah.
Part of that is because they have to drive Dodges.
I might need a partner. But thanks for that question, because we're dealing with those same issues on town level that you've got personnel and you arguably you need more and you need the equipment for them to do their job. If you don't have the equipment, it's difficult to do their job.
It is.
I was surprised to see what appears to be how little that is.
We do get, which were the funds for that big boat?
Oh, capital.
Capital funds. So we do have capital funds. So we are purchasing a very nice boat for Lake Champlain, which I'm a little jealous because I prefer to be on it. But that's coming from capital funds. And that's replacing 2 of our boats that are 22 years old apiece, 22 or 23 years old. One we got the year I got hired, so 2004, and the one came the year after that. So, and they're fiberglass and they're very tired. But it'll be a huge asset for us.
I'm assuming that's a more expensive to get home.
Oh, I think
That's why it's under capital.
$300,000 boat. But again, that sort of stuff, I mean, that like prices after COVID and they have not come, I don't, if you're obviously you go buy anything. It's just like, especially the more large scale items, they did not come back down after COVID.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, no, thank you, and really appreciate the committee listening, appreciate it very much, so thank you.
Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Right, members will take